So here's a fun thought. I can't imagine anything that would be genuinely more terrifying than suddenly being thrust into the position of being a captain on a boat in the middle of the sea. And sure, I've had my share of experiences on boats. I've been boogie boarding. I have tipped a few dozen canoes at homeschool family summer camp. And I was once left on a goose-infested rock in the middle of a pond. And I can only guess that it's because of my experience, despite my fear of manning such vessels, that TMG decided to send me a copy of Embark to review. Embark is played over 6 rounds, with the player scoring the most points being declared the winner. Each player is given a card with a unique power that allows them to break or alter a rule in the game. Islands and boats are laid out at the start of the game. Each round, players secretly choose from their supply of cubes which boats to load up and potentially send to the corresponding island. Behind a screen, cubes are placed on spots that indicate which boat is being chosen. Once everyone has finalized their decisions, the screens are removed and the boats begin the loading process. In turn order, players place 1 cube at a time from their boards and place it anywhere on the corresponding boat, remembering that when it comes time to unload the boats on the island, it's done so in alphabetical order of the boats and from front to back. Each spot on the boat has an icon indicating what type of job this cube will have on the island, full of brave cubes looking for a better life. The compass icon will have the cube advancing the exploration track. Doing so will earn the player points each round and work toward unlocking the specific island's special feature. The icon of the house means this cube is looking to settle down and start a colony. Colonist cubes that survive long enough to become groups of 4 in the middle of the board score 15 points right off the bat. The miner icon dooms your optimistic little cube to a life of hard labor in the mines, earning you points while doing so. A cube lucky enough to be sent off on an anchor spot is a captain, which is essentially just a wild card that can do any of the other jobs except for this last one. The warrior cube is the mean one. If your cube is sent to the island in one of these seats, as soon as they're released from the boat, they can boot someone else off the island and take their spot. If a boat is full at the end of the loading phase, they're sent off and unloaded onto their respective islands to score points and fame and happiness for their controlling player. All boats that made it to the island are refreshed from a supply, rinse, and repeat. Embark is the 3rd installment in the Goals Bottom series of games from TMG. Essentially, they share an art decor and the idea that a big game can be packed into a smaller box. The first was Harbor, which was a decidedly pretty cool little game. It utilized its box size and components the best, I think, out of any of the 3 games. The second, which is my favorite of the series, is Harvest. It is a fantastic worker placement game and is currently one of my favorite games. They take ideas and mechanisms that you would normally find in a heavier game and they compress it and make it easier to play and easier to carry around. Now, even though Harvest is my favorite, there's a lot of components in there, and getting that box closed and keeping everything organized, it's a bit of a chore. Embark has a sense of ambition in that it felt the need to one-up the amount of stuff that you can jam into a box. Which would be my first real complaint, is that the box is too small. TMG has this line, and the idea behind it, as far as I can tell, is that, you know, it's creating this line of small box games with big experiences. Well, here's the deal. With something like Harvest, and to a more extent, something like Embark, I would like a larger box. I've had to remove the insert, and basically all the components are in here, bagged up, and I have to stack everything a certain way in order to make it fit. Sure, it's nice. It's in a small little box, comparatively speaking, but I'd have been just as happy if it was in even just a little bit larger of a box. But that being said, if it was in a larger box, it would be deceptively... you'd want more from it. While the box size may not be conducive to the components, the gameplay itself, while interesting and entertaining, is not all that engrossing and exciting. If you need theme and you need mechanics to be incredibly strong and to have really crunchy, chewy decisions to make, Embark doesn't necessarily have that. It's good, but it's not great in that sense. So the components are overwhelming for the size of the box, and the gameplay isn't necessarily... the gameplay matches the excitement that I expect from something this size. But what they've done well, and what they've done well in this entire series, is that the experience does feel like a bigger game. You have decisions to make. I mean, there's not only tons of little cubes and player screens and multiple maps, and everybody has their own player board. Like, all this is stuff that feels like a big box experience. And they did a great job of condensing that down, just like they did in Harvest and just like they did in Harbor. That core root, that idea of taking something larger and making it smaller, if you're familiar with and you enjoy Harbor and Harvest, this does what those 2 games did to an even greater extent. In addition, while you've got bigger box games that, sure, maybe have chewier and more interesting decisions to make, they're generally more complicated. I may have found this game to be a little bit simplistic, but I think simplistic's the wrong word because there is a lot going on here with the decisions that you make. It's nice that there are specific areas on the board and each boat is labeled so well and each of the iconography is clear and concise. Everything makes sense and it's intuitive, and something with so many moving parts, if you're going to try to introduce this to someone that's newer to gaming or is just delving into something like this, this is a great game to start them out on. This introduces concepts that would be helpful in learning heavier games. And going along with the series, this whole goals bottom idea, it's got that really cool, charming, cartoony aesthetic that I always enjoy seeing. And everything is consistent with that feel. If you own all three of these games, or even if you own one of them, it's a world that you can immediately be familiar with and also is interesting. It's sort of that generic fantasy, sure, but in a cartoony, more endearing way. Look, the bottom line is that Embark fits the bill for a whimsical, lightweight worker placement game. While I didn't find Embark nearly as good as something like Harvest, I did think that it took up the mantle of what this line of games is supposed to be. And it pulled its weight. It did what it needed to do, and it did it well. And if that's something that interests you, highly recommend you check out, at the very least, take a closer look at Embark from TMG Games.